Hey everyone, Dreki here, and today we're looking at the RPM Huia. This is a disc golf driver and my first disc golf disc review, so if I do leave out something you need to know, please leave a comment and I'll know to include it in future reviews. RPM discs come from New Zealand and they tend to feature these tribal bird stamps, one of the main reasons I'm so attracted to them. This disc is 172 grams in their cosmic plastic, which is supposed to be their high-end durable plastic, kind of like Innova Champion. However, I do find the cosmic plastic to be a little bit stiffer and a little bit more durable than Innova Champion. There's virtually no flex to this disc whatsoever, and although this plastic is noted as semi-transparent, I find mine to be entirely translucent. RPM also does not include flight rating numbers on their discs, so as a beginner it can be quite difficult to know what disc to pick when. Thankfully this one does say stable mid-range driver, because when I first started out, none of the discs in my beginner set said what they did. I was just throwing whatever. This disc here has been in use for about 6 months and you can see the plastic has held up ridiculously well. Despite having thrown it into rocks, into trees, and even having this disc plummet straight onto concrete, there's hardly a nick on it and it looks almost brand new. Compare that to RPM's base plastic, Strata, which is the yellow disc here. As you can see, the Strata disc is significantly more beat up with about the same amount of use, so I wouldn't really recommend getting this disc in Strata plastic. Go for Cosmic or Atomic. Looking at the flight plate, it's pretty flat, a little bit of dome to it with a sharp edge. There's a little bit of curve around the rim, which is all fairly shallow, making it a very comfortable forehand or backhand disc. The official flight rating numbers on this disc are 7, 5, 0, 2, 7 speed, 5 glide, 0 turn, and 2 fade. And I'd say those are mostly accurate, especially once the disc has beaten in. At first, this disc was much more overstable than its flight rating, and it took a hell of a long time for it to beat into this stable flight. Speaking of throwing, let's go outside and see how it throws. So originally I was going to talk to you live, but it was kind of windy out and my audio ended up sounding like this. So yeah, that wasn't usable. However, it being windy out makes this an even better test of this disc because it shows how consistently it throws even in fair wind. For the sake of context, I'm an intermediate level player with a moderate arm speed. I'm not bombing or whatever, I'm just throwing it and hoping for the best. But surprisingly, with this disc, when I throw it and hope for the best, most of the time it actually does what I intended it to do. This has fast become one of my most reliable discs for a forehand or backhand shot at a distance of about 250 feet. When thrown flat with moderate power, the disc stays straight and glides far, and then falls out with a bit of stable fade at the end of its flight. This is quite contrary to when I first got this disc where it would almost meat hook. I honestly think it's kind of a mixture of me learning how to throw this disc properly and this disc beating in where it became more of a neutral flight before fading out. I'd say now it's a little bit less stable, and if you are to crank it on an Anheuser angle, it will fly like an understable disc. Essentially what that means is if you give it a bit of angle, it will follow that line before having a slight fade back. Even in relatively high wind, this disc seems to follow whatever line you give it for a moderate power throw. With a high power throw and a bit of angle, it will turn onto its side and roll. For me, as an intermediate level player, this can both be a blessing and a curse because despite this being one of my most reliable discs, if I'm not paying attention and I throw it with a bit of an angle, I will hit trees. I love trees, but I also love to hit trees apparently. Nonetheless, despite hitting rocks, concrete, gravel, trees, this disc has held up remarkably well as you saw in the introduction. I didn't have any shots of this disc brand new because I didn't know I'd be doing reviews when I first got it, but those shots of the disc are about as beaten in as this disc seems to get, and I've used it in all sorts of situations. Let's check those out now. Alright, so here we are at Langley Passive Park, and I'm going to show you a couple situations where I'd use this disc on the course. Of course, you can use it in a wide open fairway like this, but I'm not going to use it on this first hole coming up, which is a very tight, very narrow hole because of the water off to the left side. And knowing my luck, the first throw I take is going to go right into that lake. So this is hole number 1 here. You can see it's a pretty straight fairway with a right-hand turn and water on the left-hand side. Often I would use the Huia in this situation, but today I'm gonna do a different disc just because I don't want to accidentally chuck it into the water and then, you know, not have a disc to use for the rest of the review. So yeah, if that was the Huia, it probably would have gone a little straighter and a little further, and then just ended up in that water over there. But here we are, we got my disc, and we're probably, you know, still 60 feet from the hole. Let's set it up and take another throw. Yeah, there we go. That is pretty much parked, I think. Hi. You can finish off for par. Oh, what great filming that was. Alright, so now we're heading to the backside of the course where I can demonstrate the Huia in its prowess, in the tight trees where we have straight, narrow lies and a little bit of turn or fade at the end of the shot. That little bit of stability really helps in these situations where they're not always 100% straight shots. There's a little bit of an opening where you want the disc to land. So you have a nice straight flight and then fall off to one side at the end of the flight, and it's just perfect. As you can see, number 9, we kind of want to go around the water and straight to the basket way in the distance, not the close-up one. So I would throw the Huia down the path here and have it turn to the left at the end of the flight. This is, hopefully that's the way it will go. I always have this bad luck of, you know, hitting trees and stuff, ricocheting into water. That worked out just about as well as it possibly could. I was actually, honestly, I was so nervous to take that shot because almost every time I've ended up hitting that one tree that I snuck through, going into the water there. And today the water is really high and really mucky. And the basket is just sort of behind these trees. I could throw the Huia, but I'm gonna throw a little bit closer disc of putter to see how that goes. So we ended up more or less right beside the target for par, and always a good thing. Let's see. Ooh. Woo. Now this kind of shot is where the Huia really shines. These sort of long range, straight, but then slight stability into an open section at the end. It's hard to see without the map, but in the pin placement A, which is what we're shooting today, we really just want to go straight in between these trees and then have it come to the left here. So that's the idea, at least. Whether or not I can actually do it, well, we're about to see. Oh no, I was so close. Just a little bit nose up. So I'm probably gonna end up using the same disc again just because we want to avoid all of these trees off to the left and sort of come out over this opening and fall down to the basket. Well, I hit the trees, but that's not too bad overall, so let's keep going. It is getting dark. So not too long of a putt. So I can just make this in one shot and not embarrass myself on camera. Let's see. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thank goodness. So again, this is another place where it's really useful to have that end fade, that little bit of stability, just because you want the disc to go more or less straight, but you don't want it to fall down to that left side there, where it'll be on a lower path. You want to stay on this high side. But at the same time, you can't have it come too much to that side, otherwise you're just going to hit more trees. So this one here, I'm notorious for just hitting this tree right at the start, and then, yeah. So as you can see in this situation, is really advantageous to stay on the high side. So again, having that little bit of straightness and then stability is quite useful. Now we have just a little layup and hopefully a putt for par. I'm somewhere up here. Right, so that's more or less another tap in here. Let's just quickly throw it. Whoa. Easy peasy. And finally, let's take a look at number 12. You really want to throw it to the right and have the disc land in this position, or have it fade back to the left towards pin pad A. So that's kind of bridging this gap between these two trees on the right hand side here with a nice backhand shot. That's what we're going to try and do. Last time I came out to film this, I ended up hitting the tree probably 10 times before I actually got anything. That's about as good as we can hope for with my power of throw. Let's see, is it in a position for 2? We're going to find out. Oh man. Wow. I got lucky. Lucky I didn't skip over the edge and into the watery grave. Never would have found it then. But quite frankly, this is not the worst putt I've ever had. I wanted to end up more to the right over there, but you know how these games go. I need all the help I can get here. Well, I think I parked it. Didn't hit any trees. That's first. Oh my gosh. Okay. There we go. Did it! Yay! So while I was going for this basket up here on the left, the reality is that I ended up somewhere right down here because I threw it just a little bit too hard. But look at that, we have a nice gap through. Okay, that works. The Huia, it flies straight, but then it always turns off pretty hard at the end of its flight. Uphill putt. I would not be unhappy with that in a game. I would be so happy with that in a game. What am I talking about? If I throw this properly, that's how it's gonna go. That was about as proper as it gets, I think. You can see over here, check this out. Some of the course is completely flooded out. Is this gonna be my first 2? Is it gonna be my first 2 today? Oh, this is a tough putt, actually. Okay, there we are. Let's frame it like that, and I'm probably gonna miss it just because of the pressure of being on camera. But you never know. Oh, I think I threw past it. I just want to follow this trail and have it fall into the basket on the right, so this nice straight shot with a little bit of stability at the end, just do it. But again, this kind of thing where I say I'm going to do something and then the disc is going to do completely the opposite. As long as it doesn't go in the water, that's fine. Water, water, water. Oh, water. Right in the water. Oh wow, it's getting dark. And that is exactly why I left the water hole for the last thing to throw, because, yep, I knew my luck. Anyways, the community here is pretty good, so probably I will get that back in the next 2 or 3 days. There's almost always people in that water with hip waders, so yeah, what did you think of the RPM Huia and this review? I'm really curious to know. Please leave me a comment in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.